The Central Armed Police Force, or the CAPF, the force whose primary role is to defend India's national interest and security, faces a unique dilemma today. As per government records, there has been a sudden spurt in the death of CAPF personnel in the pandemic years of 2020 and 2021. In the last 10 years alone, more than 1,200 CAPF personnel have died by suicide. Are our CAPF personnel getting institutional support to deal with job-related stress and mental health issues? Many experts say the current institutional initiatives are few and far between.
As a society, we have a lot of compassion for jawans. I feel very proud of them. I mean, if I see a soldier, I feel like saluting him, and I teach my kids to go ahead and do that, right? But if you talk of institutional support or structure, that in a formal way, in a professional way, that is not there.
राइजिंग ट्रेंड इस वास्ते है कि तो फोर्स बहुत बढ़ रही है, तो नंबर ऑफ पर्सनल बढ़ रहा है, उसी के संग उनकी परेशानी बढ़ रही है, और कोई विशेष ऐसा कार्य नहीं किया जा रहा है कि इनकी ये परेशानियां दूर हो जाए.
Remember, when you're talking about suicides, the majority of them are from the other ranks. It's the constable, head constable level, where the maximum number of suicides happen. And when I used to cover this, I've always felt, if you take the example of CRPF, if you see the conditions that they function in, the conditions that they work in, the conditions that they live in when they're out on operations, is just inhumane.
The increase in suicides points to the lack of effective grief redressal and grievance redressal mechanisms within the forces. Insiders say many serving personnel require immediate mental health care attention, but often these cases go undetected.
I have been representing many of the CAPF personnel on various service matters. A person who has been compulsorily retired, on the next day of his retirement, he has been admitted to a hospital and he is being diagnosed of schizophrenia by a civil hospital. His continuous employment and insubordination and all those things that happened, which eventually led to his termination, has actually went unnoticed in the force. And he has put in about 10 years of service, and all through his service he has been complained of insubordination and rude behavior and all the characteristic features of a schizophrenic person. So we have now said that this should be compulsory retirement, should not have been imposed upon him, and the rights that has been granted to him under the right to access mental health care under Section 18 of the Mental Health Act 2017 and right to equality under Section 21 of the Mental Health Act, that the mental illness and physical illness is treated at par. This should have been treated as an illness, and he should have been given all the benefits and care and severance in the manner a person on duty who would have suffered a physical illness would have left the service.
Amongst all the Central Armed Police Forces, it is believed that stress levels are highest among CRPF personnel. Harsh working conditions, unavailability of leaves, coupled with constant troop movements and family issues, the CRPF jawans are incredibly stressed and overburdened.
जो वो सीआरपीएफ है उसको किसी ने नाम दे दिया चलते रहो प्यारे, सीआरपीएफ चलते रहो प्यारे फोर्स बना दिया उसको, क्योंकि हर वक्त चलते ही रहते हैं, कहीं एक जगह टिकते ही नहीं.
If you take the army, the whole idea of what the army has in the regimental system is that people grow up in service. They grow in service together, they have a bonding, and that provides a lot of emotional support. So in the CAPFs, there is a lot of movement, and for the CRPF, as you know, they used to be earlier called Chalte Raho Pyare because they move from place to place. There's a lot of movement, and you settle on somewhere to one type of duty. Again, the requirement is for you to move to another kind of duty, from elections to conflict areas to law and order. You're always moving from one place, from one role to another, and there's very little time that you get downtime. Everyone, any human being, no matter what your mental or physical faculties are, you require downtime. You require some kind of work-life balance. You require some kind of emotional connect. Because of the demands of service, very often your superior or supervisory officers, their hands are tied. They can't sanction the leave that you so desperately ask and you need.
Along with the increase in suicides, the recent fratricide incidents within the forces have sent the alarm bells ringing.
There is another aspect also which need to be looked into. It is fratricide. That is your own colleague killing the other colleague who is working with him in the same regiment or the same workplace. So suicide and fratricide are two important reasons for death other than death that happens during the line of duty.
So suicide is something that you take it upon yourself for whatever is happening, and in the fratricide case you take it upon somebody else. You blame somebody else for the situation and you take action against that person. The working conditions of the CAPF personnel are dismal to say. I myself have been to so many places. I've traveled with the CAPFs. I travel extensively to Kashmir for that matter. It's pathetic to see the way that the jawans live. They have long hours of working, and there's no sense of belonging that is there, in the sense that there's a lack of sense of belonging. Many of the jawans that I speak to are fed up, with the constant transfers, with the constant movement, with constant operation. So it does take a toll.
The life of a jawan is filled with turbulent phases of extreme hardship and harsh working conditions. Many of them face social isolation because of lack of work-life balance. Domestic issues, financial problems, and the non-implementation of efficient rest and relief measures are some of the contributory factors to suicides.
High-day pressure work involves waking up at 5 in the morning and being constantly on your feet till late at night. And without any, the way that troops are transported in this heat. For example, Delhi right now is 40 degrees Celsius. They don't have any comfortable buses. These are regular rickety buses that they travel in. In this heat, if you're made to stand for even 6 hours, to stand guard, and when I say stand guard, you have to wear your bulletproof vest, you have to wear your helmets, you have to carry your magazines, you have to carry your rifle. It's a heavy thing to be standing there and just doing your duty. So the life of a jawan is really tough.
Yeah, I think there is an issue about hyper-masculinity over there, that you have to be hyper-masculine in order to survive, right? Chhati chodi karke chalo, or be like a steel rod. That is the message given, right? There is no message like, yes, you can be a steel rod at times, but you also have to be a human at times, right? So the human aspect is something that is often completely discounted.
See, the life of a soldier is quite stressful. It is not just the official life, it's also his personal life. CRPF का क्या है कि एक तो उससे बहुत ज़्यादा ट्रांसफर है, बहुत ज़्यादा मूवमेंट है. सेकेंडली, जब आप जॉब में होते हो तो वहाँ कोई आपका ईयर मार्क्ड डोमेन नहीं है, लाइक BSF का डोमेन है कि मेरे को पाकिस्तान बॉर्डर को गार्ड करना है या बांग्लादेश बॉर्डर को गार्ड करना है. जैसे मैंने BSF का बोला कि उसमें क्या है, ड्यूटी 6 घंटे दिन है, 6 घंटे रात है. तो मीन्स आपकी एक तो ड्यूटी आवर्स बहुत ज्यादा है क्योंकि रिक्वायरमेंट इतनी है. दूसरा, आपको इंच बाय इंच बॉर्डर गार्ड करना है तो कंटिन्यूअसली आपको मतलब एक संतरी वाला रोल. इट्स ए वेरी मोनोटोनस एंड टफ एंड बोरिंग जॉब, तो वो एक फैक्टर है. जबकि CRPF में मैंने कहा उनका जो लेवल ऑफ मूवमेंट इतना ज्यादा है उससे उनमें वो फ्रस्ट्रेशन बढ़ती है. कई बारी जैसे हार्श वर्किंग कंडीशन या हार्श ड्यूटी कंडीशन लाइक इन कश्मीर पहले पथराव होता था, तो आप सोचो उन एक्सट्रीम कंडीशन में हर आदमी हमेशा टेंशन में स्ट्रेस में रहेगा ना. अब तो खैर वो कंट्रोल हो गया. हर थिएटर का अलग है ना, नक्सल एरियाज का अलग है. वहां पे आपको टेंशन है कि कहीं आईडी न लगे हो, तो वो कितना लेवल तक कोप अप कर पाते हैं, वो सारे फैक्टर्स कंबाइन कर जाते हैं.
In the past, the Home Ministry had made assurances to the forces that the leaves available to the CAPF personnel would be increased as a remedial measure. But according to many, increasing leaves simply won't help, especially because many jawans say leave requests for their entitled leaves are also denied many times because of the overburdened workforce.
I think more than increasing the leaves, I think it's that even if you're given the 70 leaves, the soldier, the jawan should be able to take those 70 leaves.
जो इनकी लीव का पीरियड है वो हर साल अवेल कर सकेंगे, ये जरूरी है बढ़ाने से ज्यादा। आप 100 दिन कर दीजिए, मगर वो जा ही ना पाए घर तो फायदा क्या है। इनका काम इस नेचर का है कि इनको छुट्टी मिलने में बहुत दिक्कत होती है। वैसे तो इनको 1 महीने की अर्न लीव है, 1 महीने की कैजुअल लीव है, मगर ये कितना परसेंटेज फोर्स का इसको अवेल कर पाता है ये मैं नहीं कह सकता। तो फैमिली के संग रहते नहीं है, फैमिली का रहने का इनके संग इंतजाम नहीं है जहाँ पोस्टिंग होती है। अगर घर जाने के लिए भी लीव न मिले तो ये बहुत टेंस हो जाते हैं, डिप्रेशन में चले जाते हैं। इनकी फैमिली की बहुत सी प्रॉब्लम्स होती हैं। कईयों की लड़कियां हैं, जवान हो रही हैं, शादी होनी है उनकी, तो ये अपने घर में चाहते हैं कि पोस्टिंग हो जाए करीब में, जहां पे इनका घर है उसके करीब पोस्टिंग हो जाए। तो बीएसएफ में ये जगह संभव ही नहीं है कि उनकी सब पोस्टिंग जो है वो बॉर्डर पर है।
Another major factor contributing to suicides is the overarching stress on the physical welfare and the lack of measures to address the mental well-being of the jawan. Today, there are not many forums available for CAPF personnel to discuss their mental health related issues. The government has put in place a few measures to redress the psychological problems of the jawans, but these initiatives are ineffective as they are inconsistent.
For example, if we take many of the European or American forces, they have full-fledged psychologists and psychiatrists assigned to the units whose job is not just to diagnose disorders, but also in terms of motivation, in terms of team building, in other ways that they promote. So the lack of that is a very severe lacune in the Indian forces.
The stigma around mental health and the fear of being discriminated against often deters a jawan from freely sharing issues related to his mental health.
So first of all, the very word grievance, it is not a grievance, it's a grief. So an army commander cannot listen to your grief. It's a psychologist or a psychiatrist who can listen to your grief and deal with that. So you cannot give multiple roles. I mean, like for example, for the same reason, my family cannot be my counselor. My family cannot be my psychologist. Someone external who's trained in that has to be one.
There is a psychiatric morbidity that has happened. There are anxiety disorders. There are cases of schizophrenia, depression, bipolar disorder, all these things in the force. There is no system. We take it for granted that we require only the physical health of these people, whereas their mental health is something which needs to be addressed very, very seriously.
In the longer term, you need perhaps psychological screening. Just as you go for an annual medical checkup, some of our CAPFs, especially those who are working in difficult conditions, there has to be some kind of a psychological screening that can identify those who are vulnerable or who are on the threshold of, traumatic stress disorder.
Adequate compensation to troops posted in high-stress areas, transparent policies related to leaves and transfers, choice postings to the extent possible can help improve the working conditions of CAPF personnel. However, constant institutional support and motivation and a rigorous focus on work-life balance is the need of the hour.
It needs to be humanized. The conditions of working conditions need to be improved. There needs to be, stress relieving measures, stress relieving programs that needs to be undertaken. It should be ensured that, no jawan is put on long duty hours. It is important for him to get his rest, get his sleep, even when they are operationally deployed.
The kind of stresses they feel they are not able to talk about it. Talking about those stresses is not encouraged in the Indian setting. You have to be silent, right? I remember Colonel saying कि हम फौजी जो है ना कितना जल्दी अपना गुस्सा जो है वो पी जाते हैं, कितना जल्दी अपने आंसू दबा लेते हैं. Now that's the wrong statement. Instead of आंसुओं को दबाना, if it is something that you can talk about, if you can bring about your human side and share that, it doesn't make you a less of a soldier or less of a protector. So that aspect, the human aspect of the forces, is often discounted.
When we had gone to the Supreme Court, we said we want a non-uniform cadre of trained and eligible psychological, psychiatric and psychological counselors to be in our paramilitary forces. We emphasize it should be non-uniform because uniform creates a hierarchy.
Some time back, I took a lecture for BSF personnel just only last month, and they were sharing about many of the stresses that they feel. What came across was that, there is a sense to say that everything is all right and we are fine. So sometimes we have to really go to the root of a problem and see that what is wrong or what is not working out all right, in order to define it, first of all, acknowledge it, and then work through it.
The attrition rate in the CAPFs had witnessed a sharp rise in 2021. Experts believe that consistent efforts to mitigate stress levels in the forces will go a long way in containing not just suicides, but also the rising attrition levels in the Central Armed Police Forces.
Coming to the petition that we have filed in the Honorable Supreme Court, these are filed by CRPF personnel who hung their boots way back in 2008. But they were really alarmed by the number of fratricides that was happening in CRPF these days. It happened that a couple of their colleagues also got affected. That is why they went to the court asking basically three prayers. One is periodically carry out mental health assessment of all CAPF personnel. Make a mechanism in the force. Two, make a non-uniform cadre of trained and eligible psychological counselors in all CAPFs. Three is ask the government to report back with the steps taken to implement Mental Health Care Act 2017 in the paramilitary forces.
Vertical interactions होते हैं ना, from constable to DIG, let's say, वो vertical interaction का ज़्यादा जरूरत है. जब task force गठित किया जाए तो उसमें those people should also be member, so that there is a free brainstorming from constable level to senior levels. Then only one can go to the root,
But many believe the problem related to suicides can only be resolved if the government follows a two-pronged approach, which involves a relentless focus on the jawans and the limitations of the senior level officers and on-ground situations that are often the root of the problem.
पार्लियामेंट के लोग हैं, बहुत अच्छी बात है, वो चाहते भी हैं कि हम लोगों की परेशानी दूर करें, पर उनको सही परेशानी मालूम हो जाए और दोनों साइड की परेशानी मालूम हो, आदमियों की भी परेशानी मालूम हो जो फोर्स है, और जो उन परेशानियों को दूर कर सकते हैं, यानी इनके जो सीनियर अफसर हैं उनके भी लिमिटेशन मालूम हो जाए, तब वो उसका जवाब निकाल पाएंगे.
Suppose you move rather than formation, rather than moving an entire battalion, you move only individuals. Then you're losing the emotional support system that a formation gives you. Yes, you're moving the individual, true, after 3 years. But number one, you're losing out on the emotional support. And secondly, after all, the CAPFs are posted there in the national interest. They are not pieces on a chessboard to be moved around. So you have to think carefully about, yes, rotation is required, but what is the kind of rotation that will both meet the requirements of the nation and also serve the purpose of reducing the stressors on the personnel of the CAPFs.
As per reports, over 80,000 CAPF personnel have either taken voluntary retirement or have resigned from their jobs in the last 10 years. These vacancies are being filled at a slow pace. Therefore, a multi-pronged, holistic approach is critical to give respite to thousands of our jawans who risk their lives on the line of duty for our safety and security.